Yeah, welcome back, folks, and welcome, Abby. Good to see you and have you with us. We just need to go over the slaughter and processing draft a little bit. And what you sent us a lot of information and updates on your, I guess, on your survey you did earlier, well, the end of last year, I believe. And what I guess the question that we have is not a very heavy question, is that we have a fast track approach bill that we're working on. And if we could put, I was thinking like half of your request into that fast track bill, if you could get working sooner on your program to, or the programs to help slaughter processing, so we could get started sooner. So possibly there would be some additional facilities online by this fall when when most people do a lot of animals. So that's basically the question.
Great. Good morning, Senator and committee. Abby Willard, Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. I appreciate that idea, and I think acknowledging that the slaughter and processing community is really busy in the fall is an important consideration around how to expand capacity in these facilities, meaning we would need to explore investments prior to a September, October, November application timeline. Based on some of the conversations that we've had with the industry, as well as with our meat inspection section, we would, if in a position of having additional resources to invest in expansion projects, a two-phased project, which would include the first phase of working with facilities and offering technical assistance and design planning support to help facilities determine what equipment, what retrofits, what expansions, what redesigns they may need to be able to increase animal throughput and processing capacity. We've spoken to a few facilities that are in that phase already and have done that work already. So I think there is a possibility that if a facility had a plan now already, that they could move into the kind of procurement or infrastructure phase of the program more quickly than others. So we imagined that, if there were, I don't think that design and planning phase of the program would take more than 300,000, 400,000. I mean, it's just sort of an estimate of what it would take to hire contractors, designers, and consultants to be able to work with these facilities to draw up plans and make sure that they had real viable designs in place before we made significant infrastructure investments in them.
What we were thinking is something in the neighborhood of 300,000 to 500,000, and then because it can certainly carry forward. It isn't like some programs that we've had in the past. You had cutoff dates, but this, if you had some left in July 1, it would just continue on with the balance of the other monies that hopefully we're going to be able to get into the budget. So we could move to phase 2 much sooner if we had this in the early budget bill.
Yeah, and even with the
portion.
phase two, we were thinking, doing a request for proposals that would be released in July. So very, very early in the new fiscal year, so that facilities and establishments had July and August at the late, maybe even just the month of July to apply and could even begin construction or renovation or purchasing of equipment in August and September, so that they were in, some of these fast-tracked situations of being prepared for a fall season. So, in a facility conversation just yesterday, there are facilities that are booked out for slaughter and processing into 2022 already. So
Yeah.
this industry is sort of struggling to sort of keep up. They acknowledge that with some modernization, with some expansion, with new equipment, they can increase throughput and they can process more local meats. We just need to give them some of the support to get there.
I think, did I read in some of your literature that you sent us, one place said they might be able to increase it as much as 80% output, which is quite a bit. That would be most helpful.
Sorry, Senator.
We all just talk at the same time. We'll all get there. No, I mean, 80%, that's a real sizable number for, just some odds and ends and revamping a little. One question, Chris had a question, I think, earlier in regards to meat processing, like working with to get people trained. And I thought we had talked some time back about teaming up with ACCD on labor training dollars to help processing, to people could learn to process how to cut and wrap and all that. Chris, you want to elaborate on your question a little bit?
Well, you've asked a different question than I'm asking, but it's an interesting one. So that's a workforce issue, and maybe Abby could comment on that.
Sure. Yeah. Let me just, I want to address the capacity expansion, and then I could do the workforce piece. So we spoke with a facility yesterday that's currently processing between 35 and 40 animals per week, and they're saying they can double their capacity to 75 and 80 animals per week with an expansion project that they have designed and sort of ready to go. They also could increase throughput by adding in a smokehouse and offering a diversity of product smoking, sausage making. So there's some additional value added equipment that they would purchase. And we kind of asked, and they said that they currently employ 9 full-time, part-time employees, and with the expansion could add 7 to 8 additional, some part-time, some full-time employees. And they just made a really wonderful connection to, making an investment in this industry is also an investment in keeping our agricultural land working and operational because of the number of animals that can then go through the facilities. So anyway, really great kind of metrics to be able to attach to this type of a project.
Abby, just to interject, is that story coming in through Working Lands?
It actually came through a conversation we had with a facility yesterday. So they're one of those facilities that is not the circumstance for all slaughter and processing facilities, where they have already started working with a consultant and have a design plan in place of what they'd like to do on their existing footprint and expand the capacity of their facility. And was actually part of the conversations that we've had to say it would be really important to be able to make sure that we're making wise and thoughtful investments in these industries, to have that design phase first, have a real plan, be able to show what the throughput increase would be, and then be in a position to make capital infrastructure investments. And we asked them, if you potentially received $750,000 through state funds, possibly matched with $250,000 or $200,000 that could come from the USDA AMS meat processing capacity, so somewhere around $1 million, even though your project cost in this particular case is in the 3 million plus range. They felt that given the private investment conversations and other lending discussions that they've had, $1 million in grants would be what they need to be able to bring a project to fruition. So again, just giving us a sense of like, are we in the ballpark with the resources that we can provide to get some of these expansions, innovative modernization projects through? And it sounds like, at least in some cases, yes. We did talk about labor, of course, so acknowledging that if you're going to double your workforce, this is where some of the early stage discussions that we've had with Department of Labor have been really critical about them being able to step in and offer some on-the-job training, support facilities financially to be able to do on-site training of new, kind of building that skilled workforce of meat cutters. And Department of Labor is interested and engaged and sort of wants to work with this meat slaughter and processing community, acknowledging that there's potential there. So I think we have some connections and some real opportunity to work on the labor and skilled workforce side.
No, that sounds good, Abby. And of course, we're putting 10 million or so into CARES money into these businesses that for whatever reason didn't qualify previously to get any help. And I think it'd be most important to encourage any of these slaughter facilities to apply for that new money that we're going to be approving in the near future, so that maybe there's some there that would, qualify, and it's going to be important that they really get help and get that in early, because there's going to be a lot of people scrambling for that little pot of money. So that would be helpful too.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point, Senator. The coronavirus relief funds that came to the Agency of Agriculture and what we called our VCAP program, we funded 5 slaughter and processing facilities with those funds, but only 5. And that was because of the way that the coronavirus relief fund language limited the scope of those investments. And so those grant awards had to be for economic harm that was experienced or additionally incurred costs by those businesses. And frankly, I think many of the slaughter and processing facilities did well during the pandemic because the demand for their services is so high. And so if future stimulus funds have a focus on kind of this recovery phase and helping businesses pivot and grow and respond to consumer preference changes and new market channels, and kind of this new focus and expanded focus on local food, that I think creates an opportunity for many more slaughter and processing facilities to access those federal stimulus funds.
Yep.
So
Chris?
one additional thing sorry.
Well, go ahead, Abby.
I just wanted to say one additional thing on the workforce and training side. So we continue to know that it's great that some facilities want to offer on-the-job training. This is where another part of a proposal that we might put forth with access to additional resources for the meat expansion projects would be looking at educational institutions that want to create a more permanent education site and can offer meat cutting courses and trainings, have access to equipment and a space on a college campus, likely. So again, those courses have been offered in the past and they're occurring right now. But one of the greatest challenges has been finding a slaughter facility that has space and capacity to host the trainings. And because they're so busy trying to process animals, they're not in a position to host trainings. And so that's another aspect, I think, of this project that could happen prior to July 1st, is sort of do some sort of a simplified bid to educational institutions that may want to create that type of a training center, purchase equipment, and do a program like what's happened at Vermont Tech.
Yeah, is that what you kind of had in mind, is to get that back running, isn't there a slaughter facility in Sharon or
There's
down
a
in?
facility in Sharon and one in Braintree, both really close to the Vermont Tech campus. And I think they've done courses in at least the Braintree facility in the past, but the challenge has been, again, now how busy they are and being able to kind of close their facility for an educational day as opposed to actually processing at full capacity the livestock that are coming through. So
So
the
that,
concept of creating education center that could do it is, I think, an alternative.
well, that would certainly help the college as well. I mean, so you gain, they need students and they need to train people. And so it would help them, help the slaughter facility create more jobs statewide, hopefully. And I know even the stores up north here, they seem to constantly have ads in the paper for meat cutters. And so, it's a good, I'm glad you're working on that, and hopefully something good will happen. The other issue, the President Pro Tem from Southern Vermont, very interested in small animal slaughter, goat, sheep, things like that. Do we have a facility down further? Like Carolyn has to bring her animals, I think, all the way to Sharon, Vermont to be taken care of. Is there any facility down in the southern part of Vermont, do you know of?
Yeah,
that
so
could
the
do-
Westminster facility does process small ruminants, and they have processed, a large volume of sheep and lamb and goats in the past. I don't know what the facility's kind of current capacity is for taking on new clients, or if they're still doing 600 lambs a week, which was the report that we got from a cheesemaker, a sheep cheesemaker in southern Vermont earlier last fall. So yes, there are multiple facilities that do have the capability for processing small ruminants. I think the question has been, as we've discussed in the past, when the facilities are faced with such a demand for their services, are they processing sheep and goat that take longer and have a lower cost per pound return to the facility, or are they replacing those appointments with beef and pork appointments that are more lucrative? My understanding of Westminster, and it might be interesting to actually have some testimony from these facilities themselves, but my understanding from that facility is that they have done a lot of halal processing of goat. So again, they do the slaughter, but they're not actually doing the processing, which is more of the time-consuming stage. So then they're passing the animal on to their customers to do the further processing. So I think there are options. I think the question is just everybody's really booked, and I think some appointments are being canceled to be more focused on larger livestock.
Chris?
Two questions, Abby. And any strategy, since we are talking about using state dollars and funneling federal dollars to promote meat processing, any thought of a strategy to ensure that it's not all beef and hog? Because I don't know how we measure the demand backup, but we do hear consistently from lamb producers, even chicken folks, that there's a real challenge.
Yeah. I think anytime we do a granting program in the state, we have a really rigorous review process, very transparent, open application period, and have some sort of criteria by which we're evaluating applications that come in, because we've never been able to fund all the applications that we've received through Working Lands or other grant programs because the subscription to our programs are so high. So I could imagine that we, in addition to wanting to see that a facility has a design and a plan to increase throughput and local meat processing. We could add, we could consider a criteria around capability for small ruminants. I don't know that it would be the sole criteria that we'd want to include, but I think it would be nice to include that and hopefully see a mix of applications come through.
Okay.
I think it'd be very important to have that in there.
And then back to the workforce, I'm heartened to hear that, that's part of the strategy. My question though was about the agency workforce, because we talked about this and I'm still trying to make sure I understand, but state workers have to be present for slaughter, right? And so if we expand the facilities, which we all want to do, and expand the hours at current facilities, we need to have our own personnel there. And is that, are you confident we can handle that? What's the plan for that? Where's the funding for that? And the timing? Can you just help us understand that?
Yeah, there's one position I think that's already underway in the position pool to add an additional meat inspector. I think you're wise, Senator Pearson. There will likely be additional position needs if we see slaughter happening at more facilities, more days of the week. It may be that some of these projects are just about increasing efficiency and flow and throughput, but not necessarily adding additional slaughter days. So right now, it used to be that slaughter was, I think I testified on this last time, and I think we said that normally our plants slaughter 2 to 3 days a week, and we're now slaughtering 3 to 4 days a week. So that does mean that there's at least one additional day a week that we have to have inspectors on site. I think there's the possibility for, going to 5 days a week in certain circumstances, which would add additional staff. I think there's the possibility of some of our custom facilities coming under inspection and then being required to have an inspector on site for slaughter. I think some of those are accounted for an additional position, but not all. So I think there is likely the need for kind of a continued evaluation of the staffing capacity at the agency to be able to meet the slaughter and processing kind of inspection requirements.
Do you have the flexibility in the pool, or are we going to see you in January screaming in on day one? Oh my God, we are the cause. This is my fear, that the state becomes the
bottleneck
and shame on us. I mean, if we're investing dollars to promote slaughter facilities and then we don't carry our own weight, so I just worry that do you have the flexibility, if indeed the demand is there, to fill that within the vacancy pool, or should we give you that flexibility? That's what I'd like to really be clear on.
Yeah, I appreciate the clarity. I don't think that I can adequately answer that question, unfortunately. I think that's a question that we can get back to you on, either from the Secretary or from the Food Safety Consumer Protection Division, where our meat inspection section is located in. I know there's been that the one is feeling very secure. There's been a possibility of a second, and then this is where kind of to your point, would we be back again in January? And I can't answer that question, but I know that we can get you the answer, or at least to the best of our knowledge, based upon what facilities would come online.
I'll grab you in a second, Brian. I haven't told you guys this, but we got another 40 farms gone, We're down dairy, we're down under 600 now. And I would expect, I haven't talked with Anson or the crew, but I would expect that if those numbers don't level out pretty soon, there'll be some inspectors that we could retrain from different parts of the agency to pick up this slack and be meat inspectors in the future, but I just found that out yesterday. That's why I hadn't passed it on. But cross inspection, Anson's talked with us about cross inspectors being cross educated so they could do that. So, there's room there. So Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. And that's not good news at all, for sure.
No, that wasn't good.
Under 600, who could ever have imagined? So just to follow up on Senator Pearson's question a little bit, Abby, when someone expands their slaughterhouse operation, I'm trying to get a sense of the added meat inspection requirement. Can the same person just stay on longer if they're processing to a greater degree in terms of adding hours? I understand if a new slaughterhouse comes on, obviously nobody's going there now because it isn't there yet, and that would require additional staffing. But say somebody expands their physical footprint, does the inspector have to be there exactly when a particular animal is processed, or can they just be there and that counts as sort of having somebody there? You know what I'm saying?
I think I do, Senator. And again, I'll answer to the best of my ability. Again, this is where our meat inspection section that do this every day and are actually the ones in the plants would be probably better able to answer your questions. But my understanding is that per the state kind of being equal to the federal program, we need to have a state inspector or federal, if it's a federally inspected plant, observing slaughter of every animal in that facility.
Yeah.
For processing, that's not the case. We do not need to be on site watching every carcass be kind of processed into cuts or ground. So many facilities might slaughter in the morning because that means they usually get animals at the end of the day or first thing in the morning. They hold them in a pen. They then drive them through into the kill floor. And then they do that process, the stun gun or whatever that looks like. Then they hang the carcass, they skin it, and they, I think it hangs for a period of time, and then they cut it up. So I think they generally are slaughtering in the morning. And so the amount of time that they slaughter in the morning, that maybe could be increased, or the number of days a week that they do slaughter could also increase, more than 2 to 3 or more than 3 to 4 days per week. Each of those slaughter time, and I think that most of our inspection staff are typically in one plant a day. Sometimes they can go to 2 plants in one day to either watch slaughter in the morning and then check in on their HACCP plan processing practices in the afternoon. But they're not traveling to multiple plants within a single day very often. And again, this is my general understanding. So there's folks in our agency that can give you very specific answers. But I think some of the expansion projects, so again, the facility that we spoke with yesterday, they were saying they would want to double the capacity of their coolers because some of their bottleneck is, they have the hanging carcasses, they can only fit so much in the coolers to bring the body temperature down to where it needs to be. Or they want to add some of that additional value-added processing capacity to make sausage or smokehouse. So that's an additional footprint, which again, we don't need to inspect the processing, the smokehouse activities to the same degree that we do the slaughter activity. Having freezer storage. So then once everything is packed into the boxes and waiting for the customer, that then goes into a freezer. And again, that has been a bottleneck for some facilities, is that they can't cut up any more animals because they're out of freezer space. And then they even talked about having kind of like dry storage, for their spices or the boxes or the, whatever, just additional space for kind of the work of their industry. So not all expansion means that they're necessarily going to slaughter more animals per day. It may or need substantial more inspection assistance, but some may. Again, if they're going to go from 2 days of inspection to 4 or 5 days a week, that would increase the inspection capacity of our agencies.
Thank you.
Other questions? Only, I have one about, have you, or do you know, probably this is Anson's question. Have you worked in ag development with any of the people from Mass or Southern New England on whether or not they would be interested in purchasing beef and meat from our places? Or do you know if that's up and running? Or I'm looking, yeah, we've only got what, 600,000 people, but if we tapped into that Southern New England market, because we've got wonderful grassland and can grow excellent beef, and there's a big market there if we could tap into that.
Yeah, so Senator, I think a couple of things there. We did hear from the facility we spoke with yesterday that they are getting inquiries from producers outside of Vermont for slaughter slots and processing slots. So there's that opportunity of the animals coming to Vermont to be slaughtered or processed and then go back to other New England states or Northeast states, bringing their revenue for the processing here. There's a fair amount of effort and a lot of priorities, at least in the Ag and Food System Strategic Plan, about reaching the metro markets. So acknowledging that we do have a finite population in Vermont, even though it grew substantially in the last year, where that is a focus of our marketing expansion efforts, is to get more local product both promoted and marketed outside of the state boundary, but also explore partnerships. So one of those has been around farm to institution. So there's been conversations of how do we get Vermont products into UMass kind of college system, which is a big system. It's been kind of on hold or more of a challenge in the past year due to the pandemic, but there are a variety of active efforts to sort of get Vermont product to consumers outside of Vermont, as well as look at some of those institutional markets, which ground beef would be one of those primary products, for example.
Sounds good. Other questions for Abby? So just to sum up where we're coming from, we need to send a note down to approach on the availability and the timetable for getting some money out if we get this in the early budget bill. So you could almost start immediately upon completion of that bill. If you got that money in March, you could pretty much set up and get going to advance these projects. And would that 300,000 to 500,000 be adequate, Abby, to get you through until July 1, when the rest of the money would be hopefully flowing?
I think it would be. I think we could imagine about $300,000 spent before July 1 on this planning, design, and consulting work with facilities to put in place a plan for what their expansion, retrofit, or new equipment purchase needs would be, so that they have a design ready for then a July RFP that could be focused on infrastructure improvements and expansions. Additionally, I think there's about $300,000 that we could invest in this worker training and creation of a training center that also doesn't need to wait until July 1. So we could put out a simplified bid to educational institutions around creating a workforce training program and meat cutting training location. And that project could begin prior to July 1. So I would say somewhere between, so that's between, up to $600,000 was sort of our general estimate of what realistically could be advanced in the next 5 months.
So we could bump that from 400,000 to 600,000 then, and you'd be safe, you feel you'd be safe in putting these grants out or jobbing it out.
Yeah, and I guess the only kind of clarification I would ask is if those funds could be rolled over into either the phase two, which is the infrastructure.
Yeah.
So, whatever is unspent in the planning design or on this education center and workforce training piece could be spent on the actual cost share grants that would go to facilities.
Yeah, there would be no time limit on that. It would just roll right into, the other program or whatever you come up with. The other question, over on the House side, they got all the money rolling in working lands. And I think we've talked about keeping this money separate from that to speed up the process and cut down on the red tape, so that you can get these things done and out the door and in progress without having to, get RFPs and all the work that this is a particular subject area that you guys should be able to handle that without going through working lands. And then maybe in the future, the other money would come through working lands, but you would have the authority to move the money around.
Yeah, so on that point, Senator, I think we could work with either scenario. I think it may be a bit more expedited to run both the phase one, the phase one of the planning and design phase, as well as the education center through the Agency of Agriculture and not through working lands. But I think we could also do an earlier RFP process through the working lands program as well. So I think we're equipped to kind of work with either scenario, just acknowledging that when we engage the board, there is a process and a little bit more kind of consensus generating that occurs through that process, which has been a great process, which we respect and appreciate. So either way, I think we could make it work.
Yeah, sounds good. Any questions from any of the members for Abby? Well, thanks a lot, Abby. Chris got a question.
Well, yeah, just since we have you and maybe it helps us limit your need to come back. The discussion we've been having on incentivizing local food and school meals. I think you've been plugged into that discussion, and the draft is largely like it was last year in terms of that section. But I wondered if you had any comments or anything we should be watching for. And Betsy tells us that you've been very helpful, so thank you for that. But any comments, anything we should know from your point of view?
Yeah, thanks, Senator Pearson. It is I think as I testified a few times ago, I think it's a good time for this local incentives bill. I do appreciate and respect the fact that we do need, or the Agency of Education in particular would need the space and time to sort of bring on staff to be able to stand up a new program and initiative like that. I think the conversations that we have been a part of is that the Agency of Agriculture sees ourselves in a support role. We don't have the same day-to-day or month-to-month engagement with every school in the state as the Agency of Education does, but that we do see ourselves in a position of providing education around local procurement, supporting school food nutrition staff in kind of tracking their local food purchases or answering questions around the local food definition that was modified last legislative session. So we do have a staff person that manages our farm to school grant program and does our farm to institution work. And Trevor Lowell, he has a great relationship with schools and with the Agency of Education. So I think we do see ourselves being a partner and an additional kind of hand in the program, acknowledging that it's the heaviest lift for the Agency of Education.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anthony?
I'm just really glad that we're making progress on this meat processing thing. It's been a long time coming, so I appreciate the progress we're making. I hope we get there.
Yeah, me too,
We're go-
Senator. Thank you.
We're gonna get there. Don't you worry. The motor's all running it. So all we gotta do is put the bus in gear. Well,
I'll just echo what Senator Polina says. I appreciate your work and let us know what you need.
Yeah, thanks, Senator Parent. I will reach out to the Secretary and to our Food Safety Consumer Protection Division to just acknowledge the fact that I was not officially able to answer the question around what staff capacity might the agency need as we increase facilities. So
yeah, we'd like to get that by noon if you could get it to us.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
And for my part, more than hearing, you need 1.5 staffers, I want to know that you have the flexibility already
Yeah,
so that you can quickly respond. I mean, if we have facilities open in October, but for a state inspector, that's going to be very unsatisfying.
agreed. And I just, for clarity purposes, our message thus far has been that we are not the bottleneck at the state, and we don't anticipate being that bottleneck. But I agree with you. I too want to just confirm that we do have the flexibility or the resources or the mechanism to kind of bring forth the positions that we think we would need. But yeah, so far that we are aware and certainly don't want to be in that position as well.
no, you guys did a heck of a job with the COVID money, getting that out. It was timely, it went very well, and I'm sure you'll be on top of this. If there are no other questions, thanks a lot, Abby. Appreciate all the work you do for us, and hopefully we'll get you some coins coming your way so we'll get this slaughter facility beefed up, and if
No pun intended.
yes. And if as you go forward, we're planning on getting out of Montpelier the second week in May, and the budget bill is usually the last bill. And if you bump into roadblocks and things that you feel we should know about that needs a little extra money as far as this issue goes, or if you're, don't be shy about letting us know.
Yeah, I mean, this is always gets to be a delicate dance for the administration, as you know, but I just want to reiterate the value and appreciation for the Working Lands Enterprise Board and initiative and the governor's kind of one-time $3 million. I continue to believe that program will be oversubscribed again this year, probably regardless of what the budget is for that program. And while meat slaughter and processing is of paramount importance to us and to the industry and as a sector that needs some advancement, there are many, many other businesses that look to that program to guide their growth and their innovation and their kind of opportunities for reaching new customers. So I just don't want to lose sight of the fact that that's a program that kind of has been underfunded probably many times over based upon the demand that we receive in applications.
No, that has worked very well, and and the house is very protective and bullish when it comes to working land. So all we have to do is tag along and add to it if we can find some money.
It's a good relationship to have, yeah.
Yeah. Anything else from any of the committee? If not, thanks again, Abby. And again, we appreciate all your work, and don't be shy about letting us know if you need something.
Great, thank you. Thanks for all that you do as well.
Yeah. So committee, we'll get that letter together. Linda, are you on?
Yes.
And do you have what you need to throw that together, send it down to approach?
I've got a rough
Or-
draft that I'd like
or
you all to
send it-
look over.
Yeah, no, that would be good. And is there anything else that we wanna ask for in that early budget bill? Have any of you thought of something that we may have forgotten? No,
So we've got slaughter money, we've got
that,
ego systems,
yeah,
we've got, what else are we asking for?
I think it's mainly those are the two big issues. My cat wants to get on Zoom with you guys. I don't know if she wants me to go feed her or what. Yeah, universal meals we don't need to do. The chicken bill's good to go, gone. Ecosystems, farm labor housing, I don't know about yet, but we're gonna have Gus come in Friday, hopefully, along with Michael, and try to put a deal together right with Gus. Maybe just it's all, we don't need to do a bill. He's got millions for housing, but to try to figure out a system to use that federal farm labor housing program to compensate. And the only thing I was thinking about that, remember Michael told us that there's a cost sharing type deal with that US farm labor housing thing. And whether we could use, see Gus's money, some of that's federal, a lot of it's state, where you can't usually use federal money to subsidize or cost share federal money. So that's the deal with Gus, trying to figure out if he can put a program together using state dollars to match the federal dollars. And so we might have to go to approach on that issue with just some language change in when we put the big bill together. But I think we're in pretty good shape. The worst part of our whole freaking deal is that universal meals, and it makes no sense that we keep tripping up over damn paperwork. I would think that we
Yeah.
could figure that out.
Too much red tape.
Pardon?
So there's always too much red tape.
Well, if you get rid of usually some lawyers, you don't have so much red tape. And, somebody has to be boss. It don't matter whether it's us in the legislature or at home in your own business. Somebody has to be in charge and bite the freaking bullet. You can't hem and haw and take months to go through committees to get things done.
We could fire a lawyer and hire some interns that could go door knock and talk to the parents and fill out the form. It is really a question of, do we want to get to yes or no or not? And very frustrating, but I hope we'll push on and work a little
Yeah.
bit. Corey's old committee down the hall and see if we can't get them to, I'm not bullish that we get all the way, but the further we can drag the agency, the better off we're going to be for the next time.
Yeah.
And maybe, we do give them 5 years, for crying out loud. Like, maybe we can just ease them in. Maybe we take the
Well,
first year off.
Yeah, 20%, out of what they say there were for schools 200 and something. We're 80, 70 or 80 done, then they throw in the private schools. Well, of course, I mean, if they want to be in. They're still children and they need to eat. But 20% of 150 is another 50 to 60 schools. Well, hell, we ought to be able to work them in and go door to door to get the income numbers. We, you know, I don't, I may have already told you. When we built our new school in Troy, when I was on the board, there was something about through FHA and federal programs, if you met a certain income threshold or below that, you could get like 50, 70% reimbursement. And the board, I was chairing, but we hired a person in that summer to go to every house in town and not to leave until he had the numbers. And I mean, the federal government basically paid for our schoolhouse in the state. I mean, God, if
And was that your favorite summer job, Bobby? I feel like you were the one who wouldn't leave till the numbers.
He stayed for supper on many occasions.
Well, I wasn't it was one of the school teachers, the phys ed and coach. Of course, he knew everybody and they were all, buddies anyways. And no, I worked slicker than heck. And no, we never spent much money on schools when I was on the board. The Miller formula was in then. And that sucker, I knew that frontwards and backwards and upside down even. I could read that. We got every dime we could get, but new buses, new school, new gym, kindergarten program. Yeah, we did good. But anyways, is there anything else that you'd like to bring up? Tomorrow morning, I'm not sure if Linda, are you on?
Yes,
Did we have farm labor housing tomorrow morning or were we going in Gus or was that for Friday?
that was for Friday because Michael will
Friday.
be here too. So for tomorrow, as far as I know, you have just follow up on the school bill.
Meal.
Does
And
Jim know that? Because we're looking for an updated draft, right?
yeah, well, just what Ed sends him, I think.
Well, I worry that Ed may not have the giddy up we need.
I'll email them and let them know the hearing is tomorrow at 9.
Terrific, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else that we're bypassing or we've got your bill, Chris, the farm machinery repair bill, and we've got Senator Ingalls' bill on that milk taxing or pricing thing that I thought we would, when we come back after town meeting week, we can get started on those. And then Carolyn, we've got a bill that she voted out that was up for action on the House. Well, I think it was
From
maybe
liability.
pardon?
It was on agritourism liability.
Yes, and we should get that bill in our committee, but if I need to call Bloomer to get that squared away. But that should come to us and then move on to maybe judiciary. So if there isn't anything else, Anthony?
I don't know if we're ever going to get to this. We had to talk about sheltering bill a while ago, and then I haven't heard much about it since then. So just want to keep that on our radar.
There, there's just some minor changes, right, to that, Anthony?
Yeah, just some changes about weather, about what, sort of like declining, defining the weather condition. I don't know exactly what the wording is, but the way it stands right now, basically, you can never let your animals be outside because they might be exposed to wind or rain, that kind of stuff. And that makes it hard to be a grass farmer if you're relying on grass fed, you raise grass fed beef or whatever. Your animals have to be outside, even if the weather gets a little balmy.
Well, my
So
wife.
there is
has
language
never-
that people have been kicking around. I don't have it with me right now, but there is some language that people are kicking around.
Senator, the House Ag Committee has been working a bit on that.
Okay,
And we can, we've got their miscellaneous bill that's coming. And
yeah, that's what I thought.
that's pretty wide open to, add, delete, whatever. So I think we're in good shape, but Linda, make sure and put that on our list so we won't forget it. And I think we're rolling pretty good. We've still got that week when we come back that if something pops up during town meeting week, we can address, we've got that week to get stuff out too, so.
I
I
just
think-
got an email from Gus, who cannot come until 9:45. Do you want to start the meeting then?
On Friday,
Yes, yes.
well, for 15 minutes, I guess we could, but why not stick with the 9:30 and
9 o'clock.
Michael will come, or Jim, and we can, pardon?
At 9 o'clock, not 9:30. So we'll keep it at 9 o'clock. And then Gus will come at 9:45.
Yeah, we can always do something, I think, but we can always take a break if we get tired.
Okay.
So anyways, are we all set, guys?
Yep.
If we are, we'll see you at 1